to this Access Live webinar session on trigger trauma treatment, a look at the impact of COVID-19 on mental health in the events industry. A few housekeeping items. So we do have a number of polls that we're going to be sending out during the session. So if you want to take part in those polls, do take part. If you don't want to, don't feel obligated in any way. We'll be showing the results afterwards. If you have any questions for our lovely panelists who I'm going to introduce to you in a second, and pop those into the chat, and we'll start going through those around about 12:30 for about 15 minutes at the end before we finish at 1:45. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our lovely esteemed panel. I'm going to start with Miriam first. So Miriam Sigler from Ways and Means Events. We've known each other a little while, haven't we, Miriam?
Yeah, go way back.
Yeah. Way back. So Miriam has more than 20 years experience working in events management. Award-winning Miriam Sigler has seen it all. As founder, director of Ways and Means Events, Miriam brings her vast breadth of industry knowledge to projects large and small. Her long list of attributes include an uncompromising work ethic. I can say it, I can guarantee that. Attention to detail and work hard, play hard attitude. Coupled with her love of teamwork and head-on attitude to problem solving, she's become a well-respected member of the industry, an active member of key association working groups, contributing regularly in writing articles for the exhibition press. As an unofficial head of IT, Miriam is constantly looking for processes and tools to help implement smooth and uninterrupted engagement with the team internally and clients. Don't get her started on the benefits of Slack. So brilliant. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, Miriam, on the panel. Thank you. Craig Maffey, I'm going to come to you next. So Craig Maffey is Managing Director of Bournemouth Sevens Festival. He's a multi-award-winning Bournemouth Sevens Festival and the Vice President of the National Outdoor Events Association. He's worked on some of the world's most famous sporting events and festivals. He has a wealth of experience in event management, project delivery and leading talented and dynamic teams. Craig joined the Bournemouth Sevens team as its most junior member in 2011 before progressing through the ranks and was appointed MD in October 2016, age 29. That's pretty impressive, Craig. He's now a regular contributor to industry press campaigns and a judge for some of the UK's high-profile event awards. And last but by no means least, Jason Megson, Vice President and Managing Director of George P. Johnson UK and the Nordics. Jason is an industry veteran. Over the past 2 decades, he's worked with a wide range of brands, including IBM, Gartner, Cisco, NetApp, McLaren Automotive and Equinor. Following Jason's appointment and under his leadership, JPJ expanded its operations to Norway, opening a new office in Oslo. Prior to JPJ, Jason held a number of diverse roles across a variety of industry sectors. Past positions include a rigger, private investigator, stockbroker, and engine parts salesman.
Yeah,
that's an interesting list there, Jason. That's a webinar session in itself. Just that. This myriad of experience has given him an empathetic and holistic view of the industry and became the stepping stones to his role as a head of experiential EMEA at Ogilvy Group and deputy head of experiential at BD Network. In addition to this, he's also the founder and managing partner of WeFew. Okay, so COVID-19 and its impact on mental health. So I think we can all agree that the events industry this year has taken a massive hit when it comes to COVID-19 and the pandemic. Roughly about 95% of the events industry has been impacted hard. So this session, we're going to be looking at the impact of that from a mental health perspective, both from individual, personal perspective, from an employer and industry perspective. We'll have a chat about kind of traumas, triggers, but also as well we're going to put a positive angle on this. So we want to highlight some of the positives that are happening, the way forward for the industry, and how we can all look to the future with a glimmer of hope, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start with our first question. So to each of you, and I'll start with Miriam first on this one. So on a personal level, do you want to just share your experience of lockdown, how it's affected you personally, professionally, but also from your industry perspective in terms of how it's impacted on you? Did you want to?
So I'm fairly open about this. I've really quite struggled at various points throughout the 8 months, 9 months that it's been. I'm normally sort of fairly upbeat, jovial person, cheerleader for the team, keeping everyone going. But sort of a couple of months in, that started wearing, and it became more and more difficult. I had a massive dip, and thankfully I'm very lucky. I live on my own, which makes it a little bit easier to hide it, because there's not the people there constantly checking on you. But I have a very good support system, which I am very lucky and very grateful for, who recognise my telltale signs and sort of jumped in and came to the rescue to a certain extent. I'm also, having sort of suffered various bouts of depression throughout my time, I'm much more aware these days of my triggers and my tell signs. So I start working on those. As much as when I'm in a down period, I don't like everyone telling you exercise, but unfortunately it is the one thing that does work. And it sort of, I started off by going for a walk around the block, and then that walk got longer and longer and longer, and now I'm sort of walking about an hour, 2 hours a day. From a work point of view, I didn't really realise quite until this point how much my personality and my identity was connected to my work life and what I've done. And seeing the business that I built for 8 years with my business partner sort of disappearing in front of our eyes was really quite tough to deal with, and through no fault of our own, which makes it even, I think, to a certain extent, even worse. So that was all sort of piled on, and in May I crashed. From an industry point of view, I've noticed how badly it's affected and how many people it has affected. Whilst we're talking about putting the positive spin on it, I do think if we can find positives, it's that people are much more willing to talk about the mental health things, and that's something that has not been open and honest about before up until now. So that's my sort of positive takeaway from the past 8 months, is that we're able now to talk about these situations
much more openly. Yeah, absolutely, which is only a good thing for the industry. And I like what you said there about events. For a lot of us that work in this industry, we love it and we're incredibly passionate about it, and it is a part of who we are, and becomes a part of who you are, and that's what's made it very, very difficult, I think, this year for a lot of people, hasn't it? Jason, did you want to go next? Your experience, how's it been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a sort of a mixture of light and shade for me personally. On a personal perspective, I was lucky enough to make a bit of a leap out after 12 years in London to very rural North Yorkshire in February. So I was about to start pre-COVID making trips down to London every Monday and back every Thursday night. And with a young family of sort of 2 boys who are under 4, I wasn't really looking forward to that. And so the light for me was the fact I spent a lot of time seeing my 2 young boys kind of grow up. And, the 2 years before this, I probably spent at least 2 weeks a month traveling overseas. So I missed a lot of that. So that was really a positive thing for me. But I think from a professional perspective, some of that positive was offset by some of the things that, Miriam's already covered. Personally, my journey at George P. Johnson has been helping to double the size of the business in the last 5 years. So again, I was sort of finding myself reflecting on the fact that a lot of my identity was tied to the success of my professional life. And I think one of the sort of telltale signs for me that even just happened in the last couple of weeks was I was asked to fill out an industry survey, and question 67 of all things was about if I'd personally had any difficulty with a list of sort of like 15 kind of triggers that were linked to mental health. And I sort of quite quickly managed to tick off 8 of them, anything from kind of trouble sleeping to lack of concentration and motivation, feelings of grief even, and then the old classic of increased use of alcohol. I didn't take depression, but when I spoke to my wife, she said, well, I think you might want to relook at that, because there are certainly moments where professionally it's been sort of pretty horrendous for me personally. But I have to say that from a wider industry perspective, I'm just really, really pleased that as a business, we're still here, especially after some of the traumas that we've seen, some of the losses in jobs and also in very viable businesses. So, I'm just grateful to sort of clients and my team that that's the case, and trying to sort of look forward optimistically from there.
Yeah, and that's a big positive, isn't it, to take away from that. And I liked what you said about your family as well. And I think that's with I'm a parent, I have a little one, and I think sometimes you can get lost in there. Oh, I'm trying to do too many things at once, and I'm trying to juggle this and then trying to juggle that. And then sometimes it's that ability to kind of just stop and kind of go, well, you've got an opportunity to spend all of this time with your kids that, and I say it all the time, you don't get that time back. It never comes back. And the impact on your mental health and well-being as well, of being able to have that time. So there's massive positives in what could be a very, very different way that we work moving forward that allows us to have that better balance, doesn't it, for the things that are important. Craig, lovely. How about you?
So hi everyone. I guess looking back at this year, and it's a massive cliche, but what a roller coaster! Like, we hold the probably unenviable task of being one of the only festivals in the UK to cancel twice this year. So we moved originally and then cancelled afterwards. So, and I guess the kind of knock-on effect of that was huge in terms of our people and our staff and everyone associated with it, and managing and understanding emotions as people kind of progress through those journeys was a real kind of challenge. I think with everything you take positives and negatives from it. So obviously the negative side of cancelling an event and losing £500,000 in a year is really, really brutal, and it's been a horrible situation. And we've been very lucky that our business owners, and we're an independently owned small team, have just put their hands in their pockets and kept our team in place. And I was watching Panorama last night and just felt just an overwhelming sense of sadness that people were kind of in that place and have lost their businesses that they've built years and years to build. So whilst we do kind of, and naturally I'm quite a positive person, there have been points this year where you're just like, what is next? And spent time writing business continuity plans and contingency plans that by the end of that day need ripping up and starting again. And that kind of constant endeavor has been scary. And I think one of the things we were talking about just before we went live was probably been busier this year than I've ever been before, but haven't made any money. And that commercial side of what it isn't who we are and what we are, but it's what makes the world tick and makes the world go round. So that's been a real challenge, and trying to manage kind of people through that. I think one thing I've probably been a little bit guilty of is hiding in work. So really interesting to hear what you all say about how linked in you are to your careers, but I literally hide behind my job. I think, well, if I'm working hard, I'm not having to deal with any kind of personal issues or anything like that. So I found myself doing that a lot as well. So there's no getting around from it. It's been an absolute storm of chaos this year, and it's those businesses and companies and organisations that have managed to get through. Massive credit to them. I guess the other side of that is I've seen a unity and a collaboration in the industry that I've never seen before, and it's been truly heartwarming to see that. And I do think that this whole COVID situation gives our industry an opportunity to bounce back better, and that we can reimagine our future. So that's been a positive. And on the personal side, I have long-term struggled with my sexuality to the point that I hid from it and sought counselling a few years ago after kind of hitting rock bottom with it. But through COVID, I met someone and opened myself up to that kind of personal journey. So I look back at 2020 with a kind of a whole host of absolute devastating negatives, but also some positives that give me hope for the future and moving forward.
Yeah, amazing story. Thanks for sharing that as well, Craig. I really appreciate that. And Jason and Miriam as well, thanks for sharing those personal stories, because it's very important that we hear those personal stories, so that people can listen to that, that can relate to it, and they go, that sounds like me. So we're going to do a quick poll, actually, and we're going to ask you guys in the audience, have you noticed any change to your mental health this year? So self-awareness is one of the most important things when it comes to mental health and well-being. So being able to recognise where you are at any given time, how you're feeling. Some of the guy Jason mentioned some of those triggers, not sleeping well, your diet might have changed, you're not as active as you used to be. Well, so have a think about how your mental health and well-being this year might have changed. Are you staying in contact with friends and family? Are you hiding behind work? A lot of us hide behind work when we get stressed. It can be a reliever for a lot of people. Or are you avoiding work? Have you gone the other way? Presenteeism, particularly in the Zoom era, as we're calling it can be a massive problem, where actually people are really struggling, but hiding behind a Zoom screen and appearing to be perfectly okay and fine. So let's answer that poll, and can we see the results there? In terms of yes, there you go. So that answers that. You've done the most important thing in terms of your mental health and well-being. You've recognised that there has been a change, and from having that self-awareness and recognising that there needs to be a change, you can then start looking at areas, lifestyle changes, life skill changes and stuff you can do to bring yourself better balance. So bearing in mind that, all of our audience, 100%, I kind of expected it, to be honest with you. But were you guys expecting that? Have you had peers or colleagues that have talked to you directly about the issue? Have you had some of your team come to you and talk to you personally about their struggles and stuff? Jason, I'm going to go to you first for this one.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I have. Certainly peers and colleagues. And peers, it's been heartening just to support what Craig and Miriam have said around people that perhaps were competitors are talking to us a lot more and talking to me personally on a level about how they're feeling and their struggles, and also trying to support me and ask me questions that perhaps they would have never felt comfortable asking me, because they genuinely want to support. So I think, overall, in summary, really sort of heartened by the different type of conversation I'm having with peers out with my own agency and organisation. And from my perspective with colleagues, I'm trying to ask in a very sort of empathetic way, but I'm trying to ask sort of slightly different questions so that I can understand where their heads are at, rather than focusing just on maybe some of the more standard kind of business as usual questions and discussions that we would be having. So I've made a sort of conscious effort to talk to them about how they're feeling, and some of the things that we've already come up against in terms of the words and the feelings have been, isolation and uncertainty, leading to a loss of control. We're events people, we love control. That's been really, really challenging. And then you sort of manifest, do we? Yeah. And that's sort of manifesting itself as kind of frustration, anger, fear, all sorts of, pretty heightened emotions. So doing a lot of listening, and really, really delighted to have people to listen to me too. So positive in general in terms of that dialogue.
That's the key thing, isn't it? The listening, said, just lending an ear and letting people talk to you and offload. Craig, what about you?
Yeah, I think similarly, blown away by who wants to talk to you this year. I think just based on the kind of previous experience I went through, and the positive experience of speaking to going through talk therapy, I just fundamentally shifted my belief in the need for people and all people to talk about their situation. I have a tattoo on my leg now that says "Talk more, live more," and it's actually believes by talking you open up your life to be a better place. And I've done some work with Dorset Minds, which is a charity locally that I'm an ambassador with, around the value of that and how important it is for us all to talk. And I've seen that in droves. I really have. There was one point at the start of the COVID situation where I felt almost like Dorset's event helpline for local suppliers, as in our region, Bournemouth Sevens is kind of held up as one of the biggest in the area, and people from all sorts of different events and suppliers were calling up to say, what do you think? What does this look like? What's the impact going to be? But at points during lockdown, I was just picking up the phone or just receiving calls from people just to have a chat. And I don't think it's ever been more appreciated. And I think the fact that we've spent some time sitting down and hearing people out and listening to people has been an absolute positive from this, and will be a great thing on the other side. We've really come together. We set up during the COVID situation, we've set up something called the South Coast Events Forum, which is literally a talking shop for people across the South Coast to talk about their situation. We haven't even got on to standards and how we deliver safety and all that kind of stuff in the future. Actually, we just want that cathartic thing of telling people the situation that you're in and having those kind of conversations. So I think that's been a really kind of important part of this process for us as an industry. With my team more generally, I think all of them at one point have needed to sit down and talk and just put their whole kind of their feelings on the table, because so often there was that thing of don't give your feelings. Actually, that's such an important part of where we are now. Realizing the challenges of doing that in remote working, I think, is something we've really had to overcome, and we'll continue to have to overcome. And whilst I have a lot of time for Zoom and virtual meetings and hybrid events and all this kind of stuff, I literally can't wait to be back in rooms with people, because I think humans are built to be with people, and we just from interactions on a personal level, body language, you can understand so much better how people are feeling. So very much looking forward to that, and enthused by the news this morning that hopefully that just is another step in the right direction.
Yeah, completely. That's a nice touch that you put there in terms of that human connection. We're tribal people. That's why events are so powerful in the way that they are, because what they create is tribes and people coming together for a common cause and common content. So that's the power of a live event. And it can't be replicated. That live event feel can't be replicated virtually, unfortunately. But there is a future for virtual. There's a place for virtual and live, I think, kind of moving forward to support the stuff that we do. But some really interesting points there, Craig. Thank you so much. We're just going to do a quick poll, and I'm going to chat to Miriam. So if we can add the second poll. So we just want to see in the audience, who would you know where to go and who to approach for mental health support? So if we bring that poll up, and this is kind of, would you know, if you were struggling, recognizing that you're struggling, would you know who to go to or who you could talk to? And that's from a professional perspective as well as a personal perspective. So let's see what the answer comes up for that one. It should be interesting. Yeah. Has everybody voted? Do we have the answer? Interesting. So about half of you would say yes, and about a quarter each for no and not too sure. Yeah. Miriam, are you surprised by that answer? What did you expect?
I'm quite buoyed by the fact that so many people do. I don't think we would have had that same answer before this period of time. I think, like we said earlier, people are much more open about asking for help or asking where to go for help as well. There's been a lot of stigma around that before, especially in our industry, where, you know, get on with it, keep going. You've got, you know, oh, you've only done a 14-hour day, I've done a 16-hour day. So I think there's been a lot of that is now removing itself from the situation, and there's a lot more talk. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Do you want to take 10 minutes off? I've been quite open with some of my colleagues and just sort of said, do you know what? I can't deal with this today. I'm taking a day for myself, get myself out of the house, which I don't think previously would have been quite so well accepted. So I'm quite enthused that so many people know where to go for help, and I'm sort of hoping that a lot of them are actually asking for that help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, like you say, it is positive to see so many people say yes. Like, it's half of the guys that are in this event today have all said yes, and that's definitely reassuring. So let's move on to our next question, in terms of then how, as an industry and as employers and businesses, how can we be supporting our teams and talent right now, but also as well to better understand triggers and trauma, bearing in mind that what near enough all of us have experienced throughout this year have been mini traumas, which can have a profound effect on people's mental health and well-being. Jason, I'm going to go to you first on this. George P. Johnson as well, just to mention, are also signees of the Event Well Manifesto, and have a number of mental health first aiders, half of which have been trained by Event Well and Balancing Edges in terms of mental health first aid. So do you want to talk through some of those amazing things that GPJ are doing in terms of mental health and wellbeing?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is we're not perfect. We've still got lots of work to do, but we've certainly felt that any of our duty of care towards our people now, and even in the last 18 months pre-COVID, need to be focused towards mental health. You know, we've all talked about the toll that this industry, even before COVID, has taken on some of our employees in terms of getting that balance right. So for us, you know, we've been through a big old round of redundancies this year. We've lost nearly half of our people, but the only part of our business where we've actually hired someone during COVID is in our talent and culture team, because we know that we need to over-index on the support that we offer there. And that team have done an amazing job, anything from supporting the mental health first aid training. We now have 4 within the agency, to maybe working on some more pastoral care where we've had coffee mornings virtually. We've looked at kind of an increased level of one-to-ones with a different infrastructure around how we ask questions and what we talk about, which I've mentioned already. We're lucky enough to be able to have the support of a private healthcare provider that provides a 24/7 employee assistance program, which is completely anonymous and supports our team. We've given everyone free access and subscriptions to the CAM app so that they can take some time off, which we're constantly recommending that people do. So, you know, we're trying to do everything as much as we can. As I said, we're not perfect. I think from my perspective, it's also important that I'm there as a leader to be communicating as clearly and as often as possible, in spite of the fact that I'm often standing up and saying, hey, listen, things have changed. You know that thing I said last week to Craig's point about redoing business plans? It's changed this week. So we're going to have to adapt what we do with our business and our people. And that's been very challenging for me, but also for those receiving that message. But we're pushing forward, and there's been some positive feedback based on all the work we're doing. And but I know we can do more.
Fabulous. Inspiration in terms, really, really great in terms of what you guys can do. Nobody's perfect. Remember that. There's no such thing as perfection, though it doesn't exist. But just, you know, making sure that measures are in place. So, you know, that mental health and wellbeing is openly talked about within the organisation, that people know where they need to go to, or people know who they can speak to, in terms of if they're struggling, if they're finding things difficult. Just that in itself can make a massive impact on culture within an organisation, and making people with mental health, people who are managing mental health conditions themselves, feel safe and secure within their teams and within the businesses that they work for. So Miriam, and I know you guys as well, flying the flag for mental health and wellbeing. So from your perspective.
So we're a fairly small company, and all our team have been on furlough. We're in a our core team are on furlough, but we also support quite a lot of freelancers. So while they're not technically our responsibility, they are our friends. And I think, you know, we can all attest when you're doing this sort of job, they become your family. Also, we have the ops community, I have to say, as pretty awesome most of the time, but properly stepped up and connecting in with everyone and just doing, like we were saying, just picking up the phone and just calling for a chat and just making sure everyone's all right. We've recognised some of our weaknesses within our business. We all worked from home before this and didn't, you know, we had access to Zoom, but we weren't fully using it. So we're now doing far more regular check-ins with our team, which is something we're certainly going to be doing going forward. You think when you're talking to people on Slack and on the phone and all constantly, you forget to ask those how you are questions, or should we just have a chat about something that isn't work related? And that quite often draws out other things that are happening in people's lives. So I think, again, sort of putting a positive spin on it, we're now recognizing all those things we have to do to make sure that our team's all right. We're in a really high pressured environment most of the time, and we're not always doing those things. So that's sort of what I'm sort of taking away from this period, is that we've got extra things that we can do to make sure that our teams are working okay.
Yeah, perfect. We've hit the 12 the 12:30 12:30 mark. Questions. So remember, guys, if you've got any questions, you can use the chat function. You can use the questions just come in. You can use a Q&A. So we'll just go quickly to a question over here. So how do you balance the need for time off or lack of motivation from staff alongside important deadlines that need adhering to? I'm going to go to Craig for this one.
Yeah, thanks.
Balance
I think
time off from alongside deadlines that need to be met.
Yeah. I think one of the things, and I'll come to that point in a second if I can. One of the things that's been really, really amazing for me in this period is I was lucky enough to be asked to join a peer networking group run by our local chamber. And talking to other business owners and other people who are facing similar situations was a real positive for me, because those situations that I've been experiencing with our team, and similar to Miriam, we have a small team, are the same as other people are experiencing. So that kind of how you motivate people who are on furlough, who, and we haven't seen this particularly, but individuals who maybe are actually quite comfortable earning 80% of their salary, not doing anything, how you re-engage them when they come back to work, what that process looks like, techniques and tactics for doing that, making sure that they feel, people who are working remotely feel engaged and part of the future as well, and discussing it with them and having open conversations with them. So for me, I would encourage anyone that is able to join peer networking or conversations with other people in industry, do it. I think the industry as a whole has a huge amount of work to do in terms of mental health and stuff like that as well. So we're talking all about our individual organisations here, but some of the trade bodies such as National Outdoor Events Association, which I'm involved in, there's so many of them out there. We need to collectively deal with mental health moving forwards, because we've come together for COVID, and we really, in my opinion, need to come together for mental health in the same way, because it's as big, if not bigger, in the future as a result of what we're going through at the moment. So that kind of all coming together, that cross-working, I think is really, really important. Specifically on the point that the question raises around balancing stuff against deadlines. I come back to communication and talking to people and explaining to people, hearing where they're at, what they're like. The pressure in business has never been higher than it is right now. We're fighting more to stay alive, and that naturally and intrinsically increases the pressure levels in all of our businesses. And it's really hard not to allow that to become kind of almost dictatorial in how you're dealing with staff. So just those fundamentals of business, how you run your business well previously, they still work. They're still the solutions of talking, team meetings, group meetings. We need to still stick to all of those bits. And I think the final point on that is I found people in the outside are more understanding than they ever have been. So if you're pitching for something, if it's a little bit late because the situation, like, then maybe that's okay. At least you can kind of have those conversations, and everyone has just been a little bit more understanding, I think, recently. So I acknowledge and appreciate that. But our people are our businesses. So if you don't look after your people, you won't have a business in the future. So make sure you give appropriate weight to looking after those people, because it's never been more important.
I think also sometimes I personally find if I'm struggling with the task or I can't get my head into it, actually taking 10 minutes or an hour or whatever it is and walking away from it, you come back refreshed. So the time off doesn't necessarily mean that deadline's going to be missed. I find I'm more effective if I've stepped away from a task, given my brain that opportunity to think about it, and then come back to it. So don't see the time off as a bad thing to do. It could refocus and reframe.
Your brain needs a rest. So the importance of taking a break, taking some time off, it needs it. If you think sitting at your desk from 9 a.m. until 5 or whatever it is, or even if you work into the evening, you think you're working yourself flat out between those hours is being productive, you're not being productive at all. Your brain can't work that way. You're exhausting it. It's what leads to burnout. So you're actually more productive if every hour you get up, you go and have a walk around, go and have a 5-minute walk around your garden, get some fresh air. You know, at lunchtime, go and have a walk around the block, get out the house. You've got to break the day up and make sure that you're active and moving. When you get active and moving, you increase oxygen flow within the body, you increase oxygen flow to the brain. I mean, your body can't function and your brain can't function without that. So you're actually exhausting yourself and putting yourself through unnecessary stress and trauma to your body and your brain by working in that way. So, I mean, Miriam's hit it perfectly on the head there. You know, the breaks are so important, and make sure that you're taking them. That deadline will always be there. It's not going to go anywhere. Just because you take a 10-minute break or a lunch break, or you take a day off because you're not feeling it, it's actually going to make you more productive than less productive. You know? And as teams start to understand this a little better, and we start to be more supportive of each other. Miriam touched on that point of I did 14 hours yesterday, and then you have a colleague who said, I worked 16 hours. That competitiveness of glorifying the fact that we have very little sleep and we don't take a holiday and we've worked 4 to 6 events back to back, is that glorification of this measuring success in that way, and the measure of ourselves as event professionals. What we should do is change that measure of ourselves as event professionals is our ability to take care of ourselves better, so that we can look after others in a better way as well. So there's the comment someone's made here about screen time. So really draining your energy, especially with running all events online along with the meetings. So it's difficult to then have general catch up with people because it just means more screen time. Any advice on managing this?
I'm a big proponent of just picking up the phone. When it's a one-to-one, just the phone. It doesn't need to be on screen time. If you've got a team that you manage, put in a regular time and stick to that time. You know, even if it's a 15-minute call, you don't need to put the whole hour in. You don't need to block the hour in. Pick one person a day and speak to that person one person a day to make it more manageable, rather than thinking, oh, it's Friday and I've got to catch up with my team of 20 all in one go. Just 10-minute chats here and there on the phone. Doesn't have to be Zoom. I'm personally, as I'm sure everyone else is, very over Zoom.
And doing it by phone, catching up with somebody on the telephone is a good opportunity for you to get up and have a walk around and get active. So don't sit down when you do a telephone call on your mobile. It's not attached to anything. You don't have to stay in your chair. You can get up and move around and walk about. I walk up and down the house and around the house when I'm on the phone, which mine's hilarious at times. But I will walk around in and out of bedrooms and living rooms and up and down the stairs when I'm talking to people. Yeah. I
think just one of the things that just a really small point on that is, as and when kind of tiers allow and so forth, going for a walk meeting and stuff like that, outside walks and stuff like that is really beneficial, because you can still meet people in certain situations and in certain environments and stuff like that. So that default of kind of dropping away from that, I think is really important to consider in your mix of how you approach work. One of the things that, just anecdotally, one of the best things I've ever heard about mental health is the best things for our mind are often free. So things like exercise, walking, fresh air, sleep, all of those kind of bits are so important. Focus, but bring those into your work life if you can as well.
Perfect. We've got about 5 minutes left. So there's a question here that I definitely want to ask. I'm going to go to Jason first with it. And then I wanted us to kind of talk about that, the industry and the future, resilience and positivity for the future. So we'll finish on that question. So this question that's coming, survivor guilt. Can we just talk on that for a second in terms of survivor guilt? Basically, for the people who have remained in their companies when they've seen the majority of their employees and stuff being made redundant. Often we talk about the people who have been made redundant. Sometimes we forget about the team members that have actually been left behind, if that makes. So it's how can we overcome this? How can we find purpose again without always second guessing why we're still here and no one else is? So Jason, did you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, I'd say it's also relevant when thinking about the lifeline financially that something like furloughs offered us, because actually there's some survival guilt linked to those that haven't been put on furlough, so to speak. Because not even guilt, but then perhaps even on some days resentment, because they feel like they're doing the work and others are at home who are on furlough. And, that's a very sort of tricky dynamic, which has As I said, ebbs and flows in terms of whether you are working really hard in a business and knowing that others are on furlough and you're really pleased that their jobs are being retained, or you might feel some sort of resentment because you're working hard. I think for me, when you talk in general terms about this, and we've certainly been through it because, being perfectly transparent, we've lost through redundancy 50% of our agency, which is, pretty heart-wrenching and tragic for us, and more importantly for the individuals who lost their jobs. But I don't mean this to sound trite, but in order to focus on optimism and hope, which is a really, really important part of resilience, we've got to sort of regroup as a business and as individuals on what's left and not what's lost. And if we can focus on what's left and think about that as a way to move forward and look to the future, and tied to that a sense of hope and both dignity for the group of people that are left with a sense of empathy for those that are lost, then we can all move forward. And, we've certainly been heartened as a group to see, even in this horrendous situation, that about 70% of those that we lost have found new employment. And that has actually in some way fueled a sense of community with those who have remained. And whether that's not something we engineered, that's because it's also a testament to the fact that we had to lose very good people, that they've managed to find new work. But I think for us, it's a sort of relentless focus on looking forward, without in any way denigrating the hardship that those that are still here have been through, but also the colleagues that are not with us anymore. So, you still have to celebrate the past, and you can't just erase it, but you need to spend the majority of your effort and focus looking forward. It's difficult.
I think the question asked a bit about how to find purpose again, and sort of echoing what Jason says, is part of your purpose as one of the survivors is rebuilding so those opportunities reopen for the people who have been made redundant. It may not necessarily be the same people, but we can be part of that, allowing opportunities. I spoke with a bunch of event students who are all doing their degrees at the moment, and they're sat there going, what are we going to do? And so there is that community there that need us to rebuild our businesses, rebuild the events industry, to allow people to come back and rejoin, because it is a brilliant industry to work in. There's a passion, and it's not like any other job I've ever done. Not that I've done as many as Jason has, but I think that can be our purpose: is making it better, but building back without sound bites, building back better, so that things like mental health are taken into consideration. That competitiveness of 19 hours and 19 events in a row isn't there. So building a better environment for everyone to come back to.
There's a massive opportunity, isn't there, this year to kind of wipe the slate clean and then start again fresh when the industry bounce back, and allow it to bounce back bigger and better than it was before. Because we couldn't continue how things were evolving before, could we really, realistically, from a people and from a planet perspective as well. Let's just do a quick poll, and then we'll go on to the last question because we've got a couple of minutes left. So do you feel supported by your employer right now? Can we bring that poll up? So anybody who is still in work in our audience, still employed, do you feel supported right now? So just a very simple yes, no, not sure answer to that one. And let's see what that comes up with. And then we'll go on to our final question for the panelists. We've got the answer to that. Has everyone submitted? Yep, here we go. 63%, that's pretty good. That's really, really optimistically, positively good that 63% of you feel supported right now. Because I think if we'd have asked that question 12 months ago, even before COVID-19, we might have got a very, very, very different answer. So that's really, really good to see. So let's go on to our final question then, guys. It's as an industry then, what can we be doing to be more resilient for the future, both financially and mentally? Bearing in mind that everything that's happened this year, how quickly some companies found themselves in trouble financially and obviously folded quite quickly. So what can we do? Resilience for the future, financial and mental health wise. Craig, let's go to you first for this.
Yeah, I guess for me, there's two things here. There's one, learning the lessons. One of the things that really stands out about COVID is there was no rule book. Everyone, government, local authorities, director of public health, everyone has been learning as we've gone, and businesses have had to do the same as they go. So we're as an industry have always been very good at collating feedback, doing that kind of hot and cold debrief, understanding how the event went. And if we look at 2020 as an event, we can learn an awful lot from it and do it differently in the future. So I think that's a really, really important part. And it's about, for me, it's about making sure that the build back better, which is that feels like a political slogan, but is what we need to do. It's about learning those lessons. It's about properly thinking about the future, trying to make our industry better and use this as an opportunity. This year has been full of events professionals with not that much to do. So they've invested loads of time and energy in bettering themselves, the industry and their businesses. So on the other side, we'll be better. As a point of technicality, I think our industry was woefully and very poorly understood by government, by people at a kind of high level. Our success in the future in the past has almost been a reason that we've never been looked at and considered in the past. And actually getting ourselves and our people and our industry in front of decision makers, in front of those kind of power brokers, is a really important part of how we kind of how we rebuild in the future, because the more that people who make those big decisions know about us, the better, I would say.
Yeah, definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. Miriam?
I think Craig hit most of my points there, so I'm glad to see we're in agreement. I think exactly that is we need to take the lessons and learn from them. I've certainly learned how quickly I can turn around a new business planner and a new budget and all those sorts of things. So being able to, I think we should be sort of very proud of ourselves for how much we've been able to adapt and change. And it's what we've always done on site. We're just doing it in a different format now.
Definitely. And Jason, from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I'd add is that we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves about what's happened. So yeah, definitely move forward with some learnings. And yeah, as Miriam and Craig have said, be prepared to plan in much shorter cycles now, which is probably a good thing, right? It's all very well having a plan until you get punched in the face, which is thanks very much COVID. But I think being prepared to work in shorter cycles, which is what we do with our clients anyway, and think about our businesses in that sense. And then, yeah, like I say, look to move forward. Let's take those lessons with us. But the context of COVID is pretty exceptional. So let's not be really hard on ourselves. Let's dust ourselves off, learn from it, and move forward with a sense of optimism and a newly found spring in our step come January.
Yeah, I really like that. What a lovely comment to finish on. A little bit of self-kindness.
Yeah.
Give ourselves a little bit of slack, a little bit of positivity for us to end on. Fantastic. Thank you very much to Jason, Craig and Miriam. I didn't introduce myself at the start because it's about these guys today. But my name is Helen Moon. I'm the CEO of Eventwell. If you would like to find out more information about us, we are the event industry's charitable organisation and social enterprise for mental health and wellbeing. Eventwell.org. Please do take some time to have a look at the services that we offer. We have membership and events. We offer mental health first aid training. We have the Eventwell Manifesto. We have a champions program. We also have Eventwell Fit, which is our virtual mind and body gym. But one of the most important things that we're doing right now and moving forward is Eventwell support. So we have the Eventwell Pledge. So if anybody does need essential financial and mental health support, you can come to us for that. No questions asked, completely confidential. We're offering Christmas packages, so if anybody's struggling for Christmas presents and grocery shops and stuff and lead up for Christmas, please do come to us because we can help you with that. And that's all come from your industry. So to draw on what some of the guys said, I think what's happened this year is brought us together even stronger as a family, our industry, because we've all been through this together, and we'll all come out of this together as a better, brighter, more sustainable, more resilient industry, which can only ever be good. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And just to thank our sponsors, Roadphone NRB, for this session today. And we'll see you all again soon.